So if you're interested in improving your feel and timing, I think one of the most important things you should be doing is working on styles of music where it's all about the groove. So we're talking funky music here, and I can think of no better or more fun way of working on this kind of thing than by learning a few riffs from funk master himself, Nile Rodgers. And what I have for you in this video is a rundown of 5 of my favourite Nile Rodgers riffs. Now, I'm not going to promise that I can be as funky as the man himself, but I'm going to try my best, and we're going to learn some classic riffs. Also, I hope this video is going to be a bit of a Nile Rodgers style study, so I'm going to be talking a bit about the theory behind what he's doing. I'm going to talk about his techniques, how he gets his sound, and I hope we're also going to be expanding our chord vocabularies, because Nile Rodgers is someone who likes to use quite a lot of interesting and jazzy chords. So let's get down to business. Let's kick off with a real classic then, Good Times by Chic. And I think this is the very first Nile Rodgers riff that I attempted to learn quite a few years ago now, and it's still one of my favourites to play. And I think it's a good starting point because it demonstrates clearly quite a lot of the key aspects of the Nile Rodgers style. What a great riff that is. Let's start with the basic chords then, and I think an important thing with Nile Rodgers is you want to hold down these quite big chord shapes, even though you're very often just playing 2, 3 or 4 notes in those shapes. So the basic chords that I'm holding down here are an E minor 7, just a bar chord E minor 7 at the 7th fret, then I'm putting down my little finger at the 10th fret on the B string, and that creates an E7 sus4 sound. So it's E minor 7, E7 sus4, then we're coming down to the 5th fret and I've got an A7 sus4. This is just barring at the 5th fret, and then I've got the 7th fret on the A and the 7th fret on the G string. And then we're going to an A13, I suppose this is. So you could think of this as an A7, and then you're putting down your little finger on this F sharp, and that gives you the 13th. So the 4 chords all together, we've got E minor 7, E7 sus4, then A7 sus4 to A13. So really what we've got is a 2-5 in the key of D, a kind of typical jazz kind of sound, but it never resolves to the 1 chord, the D chord. So for me it's got a kind of Dorian mode feeling, and I think quite a lot of Nile Rodgers music has got that Dorian mode kind of thing going on. It's quite a funky sound, I think. So the important thing here is the strumming hand, and like with so much funk stuff, it's based on a kind of 16th note feel, and for the most part you're just going to want to keep your strumming hand moving in that kind of 16th note grid. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and you got lots of rhythmic percussive scratches, and then when you want a chord to sound, you're just going to squeeze down with your fretting hand. So the rhythm of the first bar, we've got the E minor 7 chord, and we're playing this. So we've got a squeeze on this chord, and a couple of scratches. Doing that 3 times. On beat 4, we've got this nice upbeat accent. So the whole pattern for that bar is 1, 2, 3, 4, like that. And you're emphasizing here that the higher notes in this chord, I think. So strings 1, 2, 3, maybe the 4th string occasionally comes through, but mainly just the higher notes. And then we're going to put down our little finger, so we've got the E7 sus4, and we've got this rhythm. So this is kind of an 8th note feel, and all of these chordal hits are quite staccato. So it's a 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Then we're moving to the A7 sus4, and the strumming hand is the same as on the E7, the same as the first bar of the riff. So it's, and then we're going to the A13, and the rhythm there is the same as on the E7 sus4, so it's that 8th note rhythm. So the we put all of that together, we've got 2, 3, 4. So there's the riff. One quite interesting thing is that when you see Nile Rodgers play this one live, the third chord is slightly different. So he's playing the E minor 7 to the E sus like that, and then instead of the A7 sus4 down at the 5th fret, he plays this chord at the 7th fret. So it's a bar at the 7th fret, and then you're also playing the 8th fret on the B string. And it really amounts to the same thing as this chord. It's like a rootless A7 sus4 sound, except we've got a B on the top as well. So that's a possible substitution for this chord. This is the chord that I'm hearing on the original recording, but this is the one that Nile tends to play live, I think. So you've got more of this kind of sound. So that works nicely. It's up to you which one of those you use. I think when you're playing unaccompanied, this one perhaps doesn't quite sound good because there's no root. I think you need the bass or the keys to be playing that A root to really hear what that chord is doing. Moving on to riff 2 then, and this is perhaps a slightly less well-known riff. This is Thinking of You by Sister Sledge. And this is possibly my favourite. It's a really inventive and quite elaborate riff. It took me quite a while to figure out exactly what was going on, and I've been scrutinising video footage quite closely to try and get to the bottom of things, but I think I've just about cracked it. Wow, what a riff this is. And it's quite a complex one, but I'm going to try and break it down for you as best I can. So let's start with what I'm hearing as the basic chords here. We've got a G minor 7. I'm playing that up here at the 10th fret. And then we've got a D minor 7 in the same position. And then we've got, really, it's an E flat going to a B flat major chord. And what Rodgers is doing here is he's just embellishing each of these chords a little bit. So to start with, we've got the G minor 7, but we're hammering on into that shape from just a straight bar at the 10th fret. So we've got, and then you're adding down your little finger at this F note on the high E string as well, just to give you that high flat 7. So it's kind of the first part of the riff. It's very percussive, so you want to have a very light touch with your fretting hand here. And then we're going to this D minor 7 shape. Again, we're hammering into that from the straightforward bar at the 10th fret, hammering down the 3rd finger, so. And then adding in my little finger on this G note, 12th fret on the G string, and that gives you a 7 sus4 sound. And then just lifting up all of the fingers to the straight bar again. So it's. So first part of the riff then. As usual, just keeping your strumming hand moving in that 16th note grid. You've got some percussive scratches in there. You're just squeezing down your fretting hand when you want the chord to pop out. So, and then the harmony is moving to the E flat major and the B flat major chords. And Rodgers is approaching both of these chords in the same way. We've got this little move, which you could think of as coming out of the G form of the major chord. If you know your caged system stuff, you've got this rather awkward G form bar chord, but we're just using a little bit of that. So we've got a bar at the 8th fret on the A, D and G strings, hammering into the major 3rd with the 3rd finger. That's at the 10th fret on the A string. So we've got, that's giving you an E flat major sound. Then we're just doing the same thing down at the 3rd fret to give you a B major sound. So it's this kind of move. then we're embellishing this chord a little bit, so you can put your little finger down on this C note and lift it up. And another little fill he does is just on the higher strings, so we've got 3rd fret on the G and the B, 5th fret on the top string, and just moving that top note up by 1 fret. Again, it's the kind of riff that he never plays exactly the same way twice, so once you've got the basic idea, feel free to embellish and to vary the rhythm very slightly. But this is the basic idea. We've got 2, 3, 4. Then 3rd time round we're just heading into the verse of the song, and that's made up of this pair of major 7th chords. You've got E flat major 7 and B flat major 7. So that's outside the scope of this lesson. Maybe I'll do a full song lesson on this song so I can take you through all of the other bits in there, because there's loads of lovely stuff happening. Riff number 3 then is Get Lucky by Daft Punk, and this is taken from their album Random Access Memories from 2013, and there's quite a lot of Nile Rodgers on this record. This is one of my favourite of his riffs from that album, and I actually did a full lesson on Get Lucky a few years back, but I think I've changed the way I play this riff just slightly, so this is my current take on it. So another great riff, just 4 chords here, and one thing that strikes me about this one is it's very percussive, and revisiting the recording it's actually very hard to hear exactly what chord voicings he's using, and it seems that he's playing the riff slightly differently every time he plays it, and there are all these little nuances in there, so it's hard to give you a definitive version of this riff, but I'll do my best here. These are the basic chords. As I say, it's 4 chords. We're starting with a B minor chord and just playing a B minor bar chord at the 7th fret, and then we've got a D bar chord with a 5th string root, and then at the 9th fret got an F sharp minor chord, and then we've got an E major chord, again 5th string root, and that's at the 7th fret. So B minor, D, F sharp minor and E. So again, it's got a kind of B Dorian kind of sound to me, I think. And what we're doing is we've got that 16th note funk feel happening, and we're just bringing out, I think generally it's the B, G and D strings in these chords, so I think it makes sense to hold down these bigger chord shapes. The basic rhythm is something like this. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4. And just keep a very light touch, I think, with your fretting hand, so the chords are all very, very short. And then we just take that strumming pattern through the rest of the chords in the riff. And one thing you can hear on the recording is sometimes there are some little variations in there, so you could make that first chord a B minor 7 perhaps, and also the F sharp minor, you could make that into an F sharp minor 7. Adds a bit of extra interest to the harmony. I'll just play through the riff twice, once with just the basic minor and major chords, and then the second time through with the 7ths in there as well. So. Riff number 4 then is Let's Dance by David Bowie, and this riff is just so beautiful in its simplicity. It's just 4 chords, it's very sparse, but it's perfectly formed. once again we're dealing with 4 chords here in the key of B minor, and the first chord is this one, which is a B7 sus4. We're just playing on the top 4 strings, and in terms of the fret numbers we've got the root note here at the 8th fret, and then it's 10th, 9th and 11th frets. So B7 sus4. Next chord is this one, which is a B minor 6, and this is the 8th fret, 10th, 8th and 9th. So we're going from the 7 sus4 to the B minor 9, and then we're going to a G flat major chord, and it's got this note on top, which is an E flat, so it's G flat major 6th chord. So I'm just playing a G flat bar chord. This is just a 5th string root A form shape, and you want the 11th fret on the top string as well, and if you've got long fingers then you might be able to catch all 4 of those strings with your 3rd finger like that. I can't really do that consistently, so I'm just squeezing in my little finger on top there to get that high note. And then the final chord is this one, which is just a B minor 7. So this is 8th fret, 10th and then 9 and 9. So those are the 4 chords. And let's talk about the rhythm here and the strumming hand. So we're really just playing 3 hits on each of these chords, and then the delay effect is doing the rest of the work for you. So what the strumming hand is doing is this: we've just got those 3 hits. So we're playing on beat 1 and then the 4th 16th note of beat 1, so it's, and then we're playing on beat 3, so it's 3, 4, and then we're resting for a bar, and it's the same rhythm on the rest of the chords. 1, 2, 3, 4, the G flat. 1, 2, 3, 4 then. So that's the rhythm, but in fact you haven't got any of those scratches in there at all. It's super minimal. You've just got these chord hits, and then if you turn on the delay effect, which is set to kind of 8th note rhythm, that's going to fill in some of those extra subdivisions, and that will then sound like this. And it's really as simple as that. Riff number 5 then, and I couldn't really do a Nile Rodgers lesson without looking at what is perhaps his most well-known riff. That's Le Freak by Chic. So this one is harmonically quite simple. It's just an A minor chord, and then we got a little single note riff, which is kind of A minor pentatonic, and then some double stops. But once again, I think the basic harmony being outlined here is A minor and then D going to C. So it's that Dorian sound once again that we're dealing with here. Now we're starting off with a couple of chord hits. So I'm hearing this is just a straightforward A minor bar chord at the 5th fret. You could play an A minor 7 here, or you could play an A minor 7 going to an A minor, and then you get that little melody in there. Then we've got a little upbeat hit on the higher notes in that A minor chord. So then we have this little single note thing. So this is just frets 5 and 7 on the D string, and then 5 on the G. And then we've got some double or triple stops. So I'm playing largely double stops at the 7th fret and then at the 5th fret. So, and if we put all of that together, we've got hardest thing here is to get the muting correct. It's really important that you've got good fretting hand muting here. So when you're doing these single notes, you're actually hitting all of the strings, but you're muting the other strings so that only one note can come through. So when I'm playing the D string, I'm muting the higher strings with the underside of my first finger. I'm muting the lower strings with my thumb. I can hit all of the strings and only one note comes through. Having said that, you can be fairly free with it. Again, it's a riff that he doesn't seem to play the same way twice, so it's evolving and there are different nuances coming through throughout the song. So let's talk funky guitar sounds then, and what I thought it would be fun to do today is to try and recreate the kind of setup that I read is what Nile Rodgers used on some of those classic Chic recordings. The guitar is of course a Strat, and my Strat is a fairly new 60s reissue Strat. I think the Strat that Nile Rodgers is most often seen with is apparently it's a hardtail Strat with the strings going straight through the body, so it's going to sound slightly different from this particular Strat, but it gets you into the right kind of tonal area if you use a Strat or a Strat type guitar. My pickup selector is on the neck pickup. This is Nile Rodgers' pickup position of choice, and often with funk music you assume that it's going to be one of the in-betweeny kind of out of phase pickup settings, but Nile Rodgers is almost always actually the neck pickup, which gives you a slightly fuller sound. And another important factor in getting his sound, I think, is the pick choice. And normally I would use a heavy pick, but I read that Nile Rodgers actually uses a light gauge or a thin Fender pick. So I've gone with a fairly light pick, or certainly lighter than I would normally use. This is a 0.73mm pick. And you might not think it, but it does actually make quite a drastic impact on the sound, and you just get a slightly different pick attack sound when you go for a thinner one, so that's certainly worth giving a try. So this is where it starts to get interesting. Now, a lot of famous funk guitar sounds are achieved by plugging the guitar straight into the recording console, the so-called straight into the board sound, and that gives you a particular tone. It's very in your face and it emphasizes certain frequencies, and it really seems to work well for funk music. And that's often what Nile Rodgers did, but I read that on Good Times and on other Chic recordings he would actually have a DI signal, but he would also have an amp at the same time and then blend the two. So that's what I'm doing here. I've got the signal coming out from my guitar into a DI box. It's a little Labs DI box. That's splitting the signal chain into two, and one signal is then going to my mic preamp and into the computer. That's the direct sound. And then the other signal is going into my pedal board and then into my amp, and the amp is a Fender Deluxe, which I'm then miking up, and that's going to give you a more natural electric guitar sound. That's what you expect an electric guitar to sound like. It's got perhaps a little bit more bottom end, and it's got a more natural kind of frequency response, but the magic happens when you try and blend those two signals, I think. So let me just give you a quick demo of how that sounds then. So starting with the DI sound, this is just the guitar into my mic preamp into the computer, and that sounds like this. So quite brittle, quite an in-your-face kind of sound. Now just the amp sound, so this is just the guitar going into the Fender Deluxe, which is mic'd up, and then that's going into the computer, and that sounds like this. And then if I blend the two of them together, this is what you get. So that's about it for gear. I'm using a couple of pedals today. I've got a chorus pedal, which I'm just using very subtly on Good Times. I think I can just detect some chorus on that song. And then of course on the Bowie song I'm using some delay, and that's a Boss DD3 delay, which I like. It's just a nice simple digital delay. I think you want that nice pristine sounding digital delay for a song like Let's Dance. And that's all the pedals I'm using. As far as I know, Nile Rodgers doesn't really use any pedals, and I imagine that if there are any effects on the recordings, they're probably added at the mix stage by people like Bob Clearmountain. So there we go. I hope you found that interesting. I hope you have some fun learning to play these riffs. Accurate tab for all of the riffs is going to be up on my Patreon page, so check that out if you're interested. Thanks very much for watching. I shall see you next time. Bye bye.